I'm live. Baka may sasabihin ka, Mother. Parang ng Ronald Diaz eh. Mother. Ay, live na pala tayo. Ayan na. Kamusta mga kameta? Medyo tapusin na natin itong weekender natin. Kailangan ko magpahinga. Daming ganap. That was a crazy week. But I think we're ending on a very good note, guys. Kasi sa aking palagay, ito, daming sabi. Si Richard, daming pabebe, daming introduction na yun naman. Kasi wala kasi kayong appreciation ng ano eh. Ng Socratic method, di ba? Kaya talaga, wala kayong idea. Do you think when Socrates would go sa gitna ng agora, he'll start with signposting all his arguments and all? That's not how it works, guys. At vlogging yan. At alam niyo naman, itong podcast natin is just one among many podcasts we do, including the more serious ones. Ginagawa natin mga podcasts. Hopefully, dun sa isang podcast natin supported by the European Parliament, we're hoping to have live events. I'm pushing for one live event dito sa Manila next year. When we're gonna take over as ASEAN chairman, and then God willing also one in Europe kasi it's about Europe Asia relations. So that's isa pang isang podcast natin, The Bridge. And then of course yung long conversation natin sa One News TV5 naman. Shout out naman again kay Professor Leloy Claudio at sa kanyang upcoming book later this year, The Empire of Austerity, di ba? Magandang analysis yung binibigay ni Leloy for us to understand bakit ang Pilipinas na napakahina yung ating manufacturing and bakit halos wala tayong industrial policy discussion sa ating bansa until now, no? So that's a fascinating discussion. I hope folks will look forward to. So yun yung more serious natin. Itong vlogs natin dito, we're having fun here. But while we're having fun, we want to be also quite serious because seryosong issue mga pinag-usapan natin. Let me just say, guys, I'm I'm quite optimistic na the momentum is there. I think it's very important that a couple of senators na inexpect natin na at the very least centrist, if not even sympathetic to Sara Duterte ay lumabas na at pati sila nagsasabi ngayon na constitutional duty ng Senado na magkaroon ng trial. Nakita din natin yung mga incoming senators and veterans, including one who's positioning to be the Senate President, is on the offensive very aggressively, questioning itong alleged delaying tactics, if not abuse of power, by the current Senate President. So I think the stars are aligning para magkaroon ng at the very least a trial. But katulad ng sinabi ko, for a trial to happen per se, hindi ito sapat. Many different elements have to come together and we have to also learn lessons from past impeachment cases, whether ito yung impeachment case nung panahon ni Chief Justice Corona or yung panahon ni Erap Estrada. So, pag-usapan natin yan. First of all, let's go to this, guys. Ako, to be honest, I was always cautiously optimistic na mangyayari talaga yung trial na yan. And my worry more was whether the rules of the trial would be optimal enough para makita ng tao talaga yung preponderance of evidence when it comes to allegations of abuse of power. So my concern was more the mechanics at yung robustness ng trial than the trial itself. Nevertheless, guys, because napakalantaran po yung effort ng Team Piatos, I think they have to be called really Team Piatos, to even kill the possibility of trial, sa aking palagay, nag-backfire talaga ito ng big time. I'm not talking about Chiz by the way. Ibang usapan pa si Chiz, ibang level yung kay Chiz. But I'm talking about, for instance, si Bato. Diba? Yung alleged, I don't know how to put it, alleged, well, kiniklaim na sa kanya galing, but apparently, ayon kay Amy Marcos, may mga multiple versions. But anyway, clearly yung mga Team Piatos dyan, they don't want even a trial to happen. Now, interestingly, that could be a reflection of two opposite tendencies at once. Sa isang banda, pwede mo sabihin, dahil napaka-kampante nila, pagkatapos ng elections, dahil sobrang nag-underperform yung administrasyon, number 1 si Bongo, almost number 2 si Bato, nakapasok pa si Marcoleta, number 6 pa, and then by the skin of her teeth, nakapasok pa si Amy, si Camille din nakapasok. So some would say, okay, maybe sa sobrang nalasing sa triumphalism, naging maximalist masyado. Kaya ngayon, lantaran na gusto na nila i-shut down. I mean, for Bato to even come out and claim na sa kanya galing yon, so unabashedly, diba? That tells you that there's an element of triumphalist, I would say arrogance almost there. At the same time, kutob ko, and both of these two things can go together. There's also this serious fear na a trial alone may not end in a conviction because Sara may have the 9 senators necessary to get this across the line, meaning acquittal, and avoid, kasi kung ma-impeach si Sara, wala na, she'll be disqualified from running for office na. So, goodbye 2028, goodbye forever, right? And with Digong likely there in ICC for the rest, diba? And if Sara is also out of the equation, it's again, nothing is impossible, but it's hard to see how mafi-fill up yung vacuum na yan eh. We already see that Sara's approvals are way lower than her dad. Although I always found it weird that you put an ex-president in detention in the same row as the current president and the vice president. Like, anyways, whatever. But clearly, Sara doesn't have the same level of approval rating and popularity of her dad. And feeling ko, if Sara is disqualified from running in 2028, I don't think Bongo or Baste or whoever, or definitely Bato, assuming he'll not be arrested for ICC, etc. I don't see how they can fill this up. No offense kay Robin Hood Padilla, it's one thing na medyo nakachamba ka na nag-number 1 sa Senate, but it's another thing to run for the presidency. And we see in all the pre-election surveys, napakababa ni Robin Hood, even for vice presidency, for instance, right? Um, Now, none of this means that everything is set in stone. Of course, things are dynamic. They could change. Baka, who knows, pag may ma-impeach si Sara talaga, ma-convict siya, magkaroon ng rallying effect, ganun. Yeah, we saw that after the ICC and I warned about it. But having said that, going back to this, sa akin palagay, you have this combination of arrogant triumphalism, smelling blood, smelling weakness on the other side. And this is why I'm saying, mali yung ginawa ni BBM na sinabi niya, basically, parang sumuko na, ganun ang dating na basically he bought into the coordinates of the narrative of the DDS side, which is, talong admin, lame duck na si BBM. So that's why I felt very suboptimal yung kanyang podcast with Anthony Taberna. But at least over time, he corrected that. He elevated Torre. He purged the DDS from, I don't know whether it's Ched or as high and important as Solicitor General position. Yeah, okay. And he also made it clear there are no conditions attached to kanyang reconciliation offer. So basically, hanash lang yun. Okay, gets. But nevertheless, I think there's that triumphalism, but there's also this genuine fear na kung magkakaroon ng trial, this could get completely out of control. So much so that even if Sara avoids impeachment, sa sobrang daming pwede lumabas sa hearings, because let's not forget, guys, the last time we saw a dramatic collapse in numbers of Sara Duterte was nung nagkaroon ng Quadcom. We saw her numbers dropping 10, 20, 30. I mean, like, she was down to what? Plurality vote na lang. From 70, 80 the other year. Tapos, wala na. Below 50% na siya, di ba? Nag-recover lang naman siya recently because of of course, the rallying effect, sympathy for the father, etc. Okay. But we saw in the past that Quadcom was very damaging to Sara Duterte. And you can imagine that iba pa yung level ng Senate eh. Yung Senate kasi mas high profile pa. And imagine what you're gonna see in a trial is yung prosecution mo star-studded, Chel Jokno, Luis Stro, Leila de Lima, name it, right? And then there'll be also auxiliary lawyers na could be also mga big names. I saw kanina ang picture ni Cristina Conti with Ma'am Leila de Lima. You never know, right? She might even help. You never know, right? It's interesting. So it's going to be a star-studded prosecution team from the Congress with auxiliaries. I won't be surprised Sara will try to get also a very strong team. So you might also have a star-studded defense team. And then just a spectacle of Robin Hood Padilla in judge, in yung mga trial judge robe, di ba? Yung mga talagang purple, royal purple, sing bato, nagda-drama yan for sure, 100%. Like, the whole pageantry, if I can put it that way, blockbuster yan, guys. Production level yan. So, and that's what's potentially scary if you're in the Team Piatos, right? Which is like, whoa, this could get out of control. Kasi, if majority of politicos are really looking at public opinion, ratings, Alam natin sa Quadcom, klarong-klaro na conscious yung mga politiko, oy, mataas ang ganito, ganyan, or, um, since hindi in isolation yung trial, and the trial is not gonna be one day, one-off event, you can imagine that things could get out of control very fast for Team Piatos. Which is, baka, even if yung mga pitik-pitik una sa una, yung sa charges, once the prosecution comes ahead, puts forward the cases, and then the next thing you know, there'll be pressure in the Senate to demand for basically show me the money trail, right? And then from there, it could get out of control. And then you could also imagine na the 9 senators or 11 senators, whoever, depending on how you count it, yung mga mag-acquit sa kanya, this could be also super damaging to those senators because they'll be seen as basically Team Piatos. Well, maybe it doesn't apply to Bato or Robin Hood, but I'm talking about the other ones, right? And speaking of the other ones, na you would have suspected na sympathetic kay Sara, I think it's quite important a number of senators, centrist senators, to put it most safely, have come out, right? Whether it's Sherwin Gatchalian, whether it's the good one, si JV, we know that historically they have good relationship with Duterte's. Let's just say they're in the center. For them to come out and say, different version. I mean, Sherwin was basically categorical na, yeah, there should be a trial. Hindi natin maiwasan yan, right? And then JV basically arguing that, well, marami tayong kailangang gawin, so sana we do na this trial para matapos na, diba? Although, of course, we had some healthy debate with the good senator, whereby I said, well, I'm all for infrastructure investments and all, pero kung banana republic tayo, wala talagang mag-invest sa ating bansa. Isa sa dahilan na pag-iwanan tayo is because wala tayong rule of law. Ilang bansa sa ating kontinente, I mean, saan mo pa nakita yung sitwasyon kung saan yung vice-presidente mo openly sinasabi niya na ipapa-assassinate ko yung presidente at saka first lady at saka speaker of the house. Quadcom hearing, ang daming expose nangyari. The whole Miggy Mango, Piatos, and Grace po and all. Ilan bang mga bansa sa Asia na ganito? Right? So, talagang mukha tayong banana if this thing just parang wala lang. Parang we'll treat it, ay, wag na tayong trial, tapos na yan. Okay na, let's move on, di ba? Yung the level of impunity is gonna make us look like fourth world. Forget about third world. Kaya sabi ko, yeah, I'm all for passing beautiful laws, but, useless ang big, beautiful laws if we're not seen as a country of rule of law, right? But nevertheless, it's important for JV, for Sherwin, all of these folks to come out and say, go na. And then you have Lacson, not necessarily progressive, but I would say sensible enough, also coming out. And then you clearly can see former Senate President Tito Soto basically itbulagaying his way into this, raising questions about the handling of the handling of the impeachment issue. He even said na, my goodness, ke horror, parang basically, what? Hindi man lang dumaan sa Committee on Rules, etc. Now, again, to be fair, and this is where I want to go to Chiz Escudero. Let's be absolutely clear about the situation of Chiz Escudero. Chiz Escudero became a Senate President in the midst of a total chaos in Senate. Remember yung nangyari kay Mig Zubiri? The dramatic situation that led to departure of Mig Zubiri. And kasama dyan yung dramatic backstabbing nung iba dyan. Eh, di ba sabi ni Bato na, I will fight with you to the end of the world. The next yung pala, bumoto siya laban kay Mig Zubiri. But anyway, mukhang kasama na naman sila ngayon. Anyway, ganyan kasi politika natin, kaya naging cynical ang tao eh. So, in that chaotic situation whereby walang center of gravity, nag-ambisyon naman si Cynthia after nag-top siya ng Senate race ng 2019. Malay ba niya na matatalo lang siya ng councilor dyan sa local race niya? Anyway, marami nag-ambisyon, pero Chiz Escudero essentially emerged as a parang compromise candidate. Na parang, sige na nga, parang ganun yung mga more progressive or even minority, and then yung mga DDS Piatos team naman parang, okay din yan, malaro yan. Okay, so it became basically, so if you're in Chiz's situation, actually you cannot afford to lose more than a few senators. So probably even if he just loses Bato, Bongo, Robin, whatever, he will not be the Senate President. He will lose the Senate President even before the end of 19th Congress. And obviously, if you're Chiz Escudero, mag-ambisyon ka talaga to remain as Senate President Oh, not to mention ambition to remove being Senate part. Just Anyway, um, so there's definitely an element of ambition there. I've even heard things about nag-ambition pa siya na siya yung magiging, I don't know, standard bearer ng whatever. No, wala na. Tapos na. Tapos na yung time in Chiz. He had his chance back in the day. Sumablay siya. And I think people have moved on. Right? And no, he doesn't have a strong base. He doesn't have the solid north of BBM. He doesn't have the solid south of Digong. He doesn't have the reformist progressive base of Lenny Robredo. He doesn't have the populist appeal of Rafi Tulfo. He definitely doesn't have the charismatic, this kind of decisive leader competence and credentials and momentum of General Torre. I can basically think about 24 other people or more presidential, to be honest. And vice presidency, baka tumakbo si Grace po. Mahirap talunin yan. There could be other people also in the mix for the vice presidency. Anyway, going back to this, I completely understand from a rational point of view. If he wants to stay as a Senate president and all the way into the 20th Congress, he should be absolutely careful about this. Absolutely careful about this. Because he loses a few votes here, game over. Diba? Also keep in mind, there are rumors, hindi ko sinasabi totoo yan, pero may mga chismis na even si BBM daw behind the scenes is asking, sige na nga, i-drop na natin. Apparently, BBM, what he says in public and behind the scenes, supposedly, wala daw Machiavellian. Anyway, whatever. All I'm saying is that, not that sympathetic per se ako kay Chiz, but I can see the logic that is driving what he's doing. Ang problema kasi is sumobra na. Sumobra na eh. Kasi basically people were willing to tolerate his excuse or his argument or rationale na okay, elections, wag na tayo, anong blah blah blah. But June 2 na and then delay na naman to June 11 and then like, oh my goodness, medyo ano na yan, medyo sumobra na yan. I think he overdid it. Okay, I think he absolutely overdid it and I think he absolutely did not expect ganyan yung backlash. Like, good luck talaga sa kanya. Like, grabe. Grabe yung backlash sa kanya, right and left, from all sides. And there's gonna be trial eventually. His hands are gonna be forced. So it's not like DDS people will also see him as champion. So he's gonna end up alienating practically all sides. Right? So I think he overcorrected here, if we can put it that way. The fact that he was able to drag it all the way to June, because last time I checked, Amy Marcos was able to hear, what, 1, 2, 3, nakailang hearing siya sa gitna ng elections. And if you were actually to follow the analysis of much more accomplished lawyers or legal minds like Coco Pimentel. Not a fan of the guy kasi DDS yan back in the day, but whatever. In fairness, Coco Pimentel has been a very eloquent, basically budul buster ng itong mga delaying tactics na yan. Klarong-klaro, hindi lang forthwith dun sa ating saligang batas, klarong-klaro din sa rules mismo ng Senado na kung kailan meron kang overlap kung saan meron kang pending legislation and at the same time meron ka rin trial, impeachment trial. Unahin mo na yung impeachment trial para hindi nakalutang yung opisyales. So you give urgent priority, 'di ba? You give precedence to the trial. That's very clear. So hindi lang constitution ang pinag-usapan, yung rules ng Senado mismo. Now that's important because basically the Chiz Escudero argument is again, based on the American, precedents, the idea is that doon magkakaroon ng trial if nagkaroon din ng plenary, right? And basically back into session na, back into the normal session ng Senado, then pwede ka mag-proceed with the impeachment. But Coco Pimentel also had a very good argument. It's like, why are we using America as a kind of one-to-one correspondence, inspiration? In fact, we can do our own version of things, right? Anyway, in short, maraming butas dun sa kanyang seeming delaying tactics. Right? Kasi I think pushing it to June 2, medyo then when he delayed it again, I think, and then nung lumabas na si Bato pa, ganyan, they were trying to nip this in the bud and prevent the riot. I think that's where really it went south for Chiz. And early next week, you're gonna see huge protests, huge rallies. And this could be just a patikim lang of the kind of political backlash that could come for many people. Kaya sabi ko, mahalaga, when you saw JV, Sherwin, a lot of these people coming out and saying, okay na, trial na tayo, that already tells you na the message was received by even the more centrist figures, if not Duterte-friendly figures in the Senate. So actually that tells you na Chiz is basically alone on his own on this. And he's gonna take all the punches on this. He's gonna take all the blame on this. Because whatever behind the scenes, mga conversations, negotiations, whatever is happening, whatever, he's gonna take all the blame. The buck stops with him because he's the Senate president. So wala akong pake kung what is the exact dynamic between him and BBM. I don't, or Lisa, whatever. Are they also encouraging him to delay this? Not because they fear na impeachment will actually strengthen Sara. Whatever it is, guys, he overdid it. And now, dito talaga is gonna pay the price. At makita natin grabe yung backlash sa kanya. He's probably the least popular political figure right now, right? Or national political figure for that matter. So, that takes us to the next important issue. I think meron na tayong critical mass ng ating mga kababayan na mobilize, na galit na. Not to mention itong yung proliferation, profusion, explosion, like volcanic eruption ng itong mga memes about Chiz. And to be honest, I think some of them are a bit too mean. I mean, to be honest, medyo nagiging sobrang below the belt. I know I make joke na boy kilay, ganun. By the way, natural to. Yeah, but I think some of them are going really too much, okay? Like, guys, come on. Hindi na natin kailangan maging DDS style na, don't go down to DDS style kabastusan. Wag tayong ganun. Alright? I know people are angry at Chiz, but I think you have to keep this as a civilized, satirical level. Wag na mga barbaric style. But anyway, naiintindihan ko, ang daming galit. Online, and soon, in the streets, you're gonna see more and more people showing anger. And again, all the box stops with Chiz, and he's gonna take all the punches on this. So, mag-isip talaga siya. Which is why is this important? Because mukhang papunta na talaga tayo sa trial. But as I said, kailangan na sisiguraduhin natin na hindi Mickey Mouse trial to. No offense kay Mickey Mouse, by the way. I love Mickey Mouse. I'm just saying, you know exactly what I mean, right? Kasi kangaroo court is a situation whereby the person, kangaroo court is basically a situation whereby those in authority, in power, are gonna weaponize a legal proceeding to crack down on an activist, blah, blah, blah. So, hindi mag-apply dito yan because, alam niyo na, Sara is not an activist or the enemy of the state situation. If anything, marami siyang mga sympathetic figures dyan sa Senado. But, that's why I use Mickey Mouse trial. Mickey Mouse trial is almost the opposite of kangaroo court. In a kangaroo court, alam mo na guilty, papunta na tayo sa guilty. This is just formality. So, classic cases are like Soviet Union kangaroo courts ng mga kalaban ni Stalin, Khrushchev, whatever. Right? You could say, yeah, kangaroo court din yung ginagawa kay Leila de Lima, kay Maria Ressa, etc. Kaso, sa sobrang palpak at sobrang vacuous at walang kakwenta-kwenta yung mga kaso laban sa kanila, they couldn't even take it to its logical conclusion, right? Kaya sumablay and the whole thing fell apart as soon as Duterte and the cronies were out of the picture. Going back to this, kaya I call it Mickey Mouse because a Mickey Mouse trial is the opposite of a kangaroo court. In a Mickey Mouse trial, basically, poprotektahan mo yung accused. Because takot ka sa kanya politically or allied ka sa kanya. So we have to make sure hindi magkakaroon ng Mickey Mouse trial kung saan basically ipit yung kamay ng prosecution. Yung mga rules are gonna constrain the ability of the prosecution team to not only provide relevant evidence, but also prevent them from presenting or asking for relevant evidence. Again, show me the money trail, right? As Senator Trinas has been saying. So, yun ang para sa akin ang real challenge ngayon. It's not that the trial per se will happen. It's that maging Mickey Mouse trial to. So, napakamahalaga na yung mga tao na involved ngayon in pressuring the Senate, Chiz, whatever, make sure you do it in a way na papunta na tayo sa crocodile court. Wag naman crocodile court. Let's not stretch it too much. Okay? Let's just keep it at Mickey Mouse versus kangaroo, okay? Let's keep it cute. Kasi hindi naman masyadong cute yung ano eh. But anyway, ayan na naman, papahamak na naman tayo. But do you get what I'm saying? Talaga guys, hindi dapat tayo maging kampante kung mangyari lang yung trial next week. 4 p.m. June 11, not enough, my friend. Hindi pwede yan. Dapat sisiguraduhin natin na yung mangyayaring trial ay totoong trial, hindi Mickey Mouse trial. Alright? Kung saan basically poprotektahan yung accused. Who, based on preponderance of evidence, was impeached by a supermajority in the lower house. Right? So, yun lang. I just want people to keep that in mind. So, sisiguraduhin natin na walang Mickey Mouse situation. And yes, sige na nga, crocodile, whatever you want to call it. Basta no Mickey Mouse court. Yun ang dapat focus. So, not only call for trial, but call for a robust, objective, comprehensive trial that allows the prosecution team to be able to present and demand for all relevant evidence that would shed light on the nature of accusations or the articles of impeachment versus the current vice president and the former Department of Education secretary. Yun dapat. So I think dapat klarong-klaro talaga yung mga advocates ng rule of law dito. And as I said, this is about rule of law. Yes, in a Jurassic trial. Tama na yan. Okay na. I think we guys, I think we got the message across. Okay, we don't have to overdo it. Okay, so yun dapat ang message throughout the week. Hindi lang trial, totoong trial. Alright? No, walang protection racket, walang timpiatos. Absolutely dapat clear yan. Okay? And absolutely dapat clear. And dito, dapat hindi lang lahat ng tao ay nakatutok lang kay Chiz. Because Chiz is just it's just the tip of the iceberg, and whatever. It's like, alam na naman natin sino mga timpiatos di ba? Call out mo yung mga yan. Pressure mo mga yan na ayusin nila. Basically, you have to put pressure on them para yung mga mas nasa center, yung mga ibang enabler, yung mga ibang pa-cute, ibang pa-safe, ayusin din nila. Okay? So, you might not get enough number to convict her, but you might have enough number, or you might eventually get enough number, right, to get a real trial. And the real trial itself could be sufficient to ensure an element of accountability, or at least na hindi magkakaroon ng Timpiatos Malacanang 2028 or anytime after that. Okay? Now, let me go to the last part of our discussion for today. Whenever I use the term people power, I see there like different types of responses, but one of the more prominent responses na nakita natin, which is this ayan na naman, people power, ano bang nakamit natin? Anong petsa na, 'di ba? Anong 'di ba? Anong kwenta yung mga, so gets ko 'yan. I understand the skepticism. Kaya nga sabi ko, the challenge here is to make sure first you get a trial, second you don't get a Mickey Mouse trial, meaning a real trial, and third, meaning money trial, and third, also, make sure you learn lessons from what went right and what went wrong sa mga previous impeachment cases. Some would argue that the ERAP case is interesting because once the back then Team Weteng na lang tawagin natin tried to block yung opening of the seal, which would have done pala yun, but whatever. That was outrageous enough to provoke EDSA people power. And the rest is history. Natanggal rin si ERAP eventually. And the military even had to come in. Now, that became extra-constitutional, although the constitution of that was later on resolved. Check yung decision ni Justice Davide, etc. Mahabang usapan yan. So, the lesson from the ERAP impeachment is that kung garapalan yung protection racket, Team Piatos Weteng style, there will be serious political backlash. But the lesson also from EDSA 2 is that hindi pwede purong ganyan na lang. Ang problema kasi after EDSA 2 is walang follow-through. Ano bang ginawa natin after EDSA 2 para siguraduhin na matino yung Senado natin, na may matino yung tayong checks and balances, na matino yung mga court systems natin, na may rule of law tayo? Because clearly, if we did our assignment, hindi tayo nasa ganitong sitwasyon ngayon. 'Di ba? Na yung isang tao na ICC level criminal allegedly ay naging presidente pa natin. At yung anak niya gusto rin maging presidente, and so on and so forth, right? At yung mga factotum niya nagiging senator pa. So obviously something went wrong. Now that doesn't mean mali yung people power response to the brazen impunity that some senators were trying to secure for ERAP. It just means that may pagkakulang in terms of follow through. And that's always the problem sa atin I always see that. We do something nice and then wala nang follow through. 'Di ba? Yung mga ganyan style, hindi pwede yan. Kaya nga ganyan tayo eh. Walang follow through. I mean, that was also my criticism of BBM. Walang follow through. Okay, ICC, arrest Digong, and then what? How are you gonna justify that? Ano narrative mo? Are you gonna show the real victims? How are you gonna make sure na this is legitimized in the eyes of majority people? Walang follow through tuloy, 'di ba? Tumulong pa sa kabilang kampo, nag-backfire pa. But anyway, um so there are two lessons from the ERAP situation. One is kung garapalan yung gagawin ng mga senador, there will be political consequences and potentially chaotic political chaos, right? Which I don't endorse, by the way, to be absolutely clear about it. Because the whole point is to make sure na hindi kailangan na magkaroon tayo ng extra constitutional because you want to make sure that your existing institution do the job. And then the corona one, I felt I was working in the Congress back then, and I could hear from different people, including bureaucrats inside the Congress, na walang partisan, na feeling nila medyo it got a little bit out of control and it was a little bit overzealous. And I think there's a school of thought, maybe Sir Ronald will not agree with me, but there's a school of thought that says actually Corona would not have protected Arroyo, and that was a kind of basically overkill. And it also sowed the seed of political backlash later on, especially nung the Jingoy types and the rest and all were claiming na mambo jumbo daw nangyari. Anyway, I just feel the Corona impeachment also has divergent lessons. On one hand, it shows that you can make the numbers happen if you can combine public pressure and behind the scenes negotiations, right? So that's the lesson from the Corona example. But the other lesson also from Corona example is you cannot make this look like kangaroo court or talagang bardagulan, right? Or political persecution. So that's where the messaging and all will be also very important. Okay? So in short, each of those impeachment proceedings have divergent lessons. Kaya mahalaga dun sa mga tao na nagpo-push for trial, they learn these lessons so that we make sure if ever mangyari ang trial na yan, it's neither Mickey Mouse nor a kangaroo court. And if ever there is a denouement, some sort of dramatic end to this, whether it's a dramatic conviction or highly controversial acquittal, there's a follow-through na hindi lang hanggang dyan lang. There has to be more to that. There has to be a long-term follow-through in terms of institutional building, checks and balances. Kaya sa aking palagay, medyo nakukulangan ako eh. Parang I think there's too much hit on Chiz alone and others are getting basically scot-free yung iba. And I'm not just talking about Bato. At the same time, I think people have very simplistic understanding of people power and the precedents in history without properly understanding what went right and what went wrong. There's always the good and the bad and the ugly. You have to separate those things and accordingly you have to learn the lessons and then move forward. Right? So I can see responses. Some will say, walang kwenta yung people power. Others will say, hindi, ganyan talagang demokrasya. Well, mali kayong pareho. As I always, mali kayo, sorry. You have to compartmentalize it. There are different lessons from each issue. Kaya nga dapat proper analysis ang gagawin natin eh. Ang problema kasi sa atin, puro na lang partisan. And then, like, wala akong problema na partisan analysis, but ayusin mo. Hindi yung mga pabebe lang or mga ano lang. Dumadami pa nga yung mga attorney DDS na yung mga pandering game and all. Tapos, basically, okay, magaling daw siya para sabay lahat ng mga luminaries ng UP law, mga ganun, ay completely opposite yung point of view. But anyway, hopefully we'll have Justice Carpio also soon back on this show to also break down, speaking of real legal minds and luminaries, to break down some of the technicalities and issues here. But all I'm saying here, guys, is pag-aralan natin ng kasaysayan, dapat matuto tayo sa mga tama at mali. Pareho. At yun ang dapat maging ating basihan dun sa ating mga adhikain sa mga susunod na araw at mga susunod na buwan. Basically, dahil imposible na matapos itong trial na to, assuming magsa-start ito sa June 11, sa 19th Congress. Talagang magka-carry over yan sa 20th Congress. So, dapat maayos yung fundamentals, yung rules of the game, yung foundational procedural preparations, para pagdating ito sa 20th Congress, hindi na pwede isabotahe ng mga timpiatos and all. Right? Again, Lumaki ba yung Team Piatos after this election or not? I don't know. I mean, look at it. Yung isa nga, di ba? Yung isa, dating Ronald Llamas ni Digong, tapos biglang nag-alyansa, tapos ngayon bumabalik na naman. So actually, it's really hard to say who's winning and who's losing when ganun ka fluid, to put it nicely, yung loyalties ng mga senador natin ng iba. Right? Now, if only all senators were like Riza Ontiveros or I don't know, I mean at least consistent si Robin Hood Padilla where he stands. At least, I may not agree with it, but at least he's consistent where he stands, right? Problema is, yun ang literally minority, especially in the case of Riza Ontiveros, right? Literally minority yung mga ganun. So, eto rin huling karagdagan lang, sana naman magsasalita na rin yung mga bagong nanalo na liberal or progressive. Si Bam, si Kiko, I think at the very least they can say there should be a trial, right? I don't think that's controversial or polarizing, right? If you have senators who are even close to Sara's side saying na constitutional duty natin yan, I want to hear that from Kiko more. I want to hear that more from Bam. So during election, naintindihan ko, pa-safe yung iba dyan. And well, it worked for them. Congratulations. But ito na, we're down to real business. And sana, hindi na tayo pa-safe forever. Right? We already have enough pa-safe senators there. So sana naman ibang mga liberal progressive senators na nakalusot, and more than nakalusot, they use their momentum and mandate for the best. Kasi kawawa naman si Riza Ontiveros, mag-isa lang siya. And Coco Pimentel is on the way out. And, in a different world, Coco Pimentel would have been also one of the finer legal minds to make the case for this trial. Although sablay naman yung take niya sa mga ibang issues dahil sa kanyang DDS background. But anyway, all I want to say is I want to see more from Kiko, from Bam, and these people. I'm not hearing enough. Maybe there's something wrong with my algorithm. Maybe I have to do more research. But please forward to me because I want to see the intensity of their intervention on this issue. All right? Because Mark Coleta already has spoken on this issue. Sabi niya, dapat wala nga trial. Di ba? So I think there's no excuse here to be wishy-washy or prevaricate. On that note, maraming salamat. Thank you so much guys for following us throughout the week. Na-upload na po natin ng mga different episodes. More episodes to come. Some of them you can catch the live version, but the more finalist version, it takes some time. But hopefully, more and more of that will be updated, including isa sa studio natin with Sir Ronald. And then of course, yung iba, RRM, RRMC, lumabas na. Yung isang RNR, ina-edit pa, but hopefully we'll get them also. Go to our YouTube channel, that's already there. And also some of them have been posted already here. So I appreciate your support guys. Thank you so much sa inyong pagmamahal. At sana tuloy-tuloy lang itong momentum natin in terms of the call for accountability. Because kung wala accountability at purong impunity, especially yung Team Piatos level impunity, ay medyo fourth world level na tayo. At good luck talaga. Hindi tayo siseryosoy ng investors. We're not gonna be taken seriously by anyone. Right? So if you want the Philippines to develop, the first thing you want to fix is rule of law and accountability. Because that's what top investors and people who can bring manufacturing the best thing to bring to our country. By the way, I'm just making that argument for those who are making the supposed pragmatic argument. But our argument should be much more aspirational, much more principled, and by the way, constitutional. Sa ating saligang batas dapat to. Alright? Sa ating dapat mga prinsipyo ang mga bagay na ito bilang mga mamamayan ng isang demokratikong bansa. Alright? At malapit na rin yung Independence Day natin. Sana naman, di ba? Baka naman. On that note, thank you very much. Maraming salamat. Thank you rin sa mga trolls natin dyan for helping us with engagement. But it's not like we need you too much. But guys, wag na naman kayo mean. Let's not go down to their level. We're better. When they go low, we go a bit low and then we go high. Right? All right, on that note, thank you very much. God bless, and don't forget to follow us on different platforms. Thank you for your stars. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the stickers and all sorts of different ways of showing your love and your investment, hopefully, sense of emotional investment at the very least, and ethical investments dito sa ating maliit na proyekto. God bless, and adios. Talk to you soon.